Hey y'all, today we're going to talk about comparing proportional relationships. So let's go ahead and start by looking at our first problem. First of all, we're going to compare two different apple orchards and see which orchard has the better deal on picking apples. So whenever you're comparing something with prices, you always want to set up your proportion as a fraction to compare the two different items. And when you're talking about a monetary value, you always want to put the money on top to divide it. So let's look at Annie's apple orchard first. So Annie's apple orchard offers 20 pounds of apples for $7.25. So in order to break this down to its unit rate of 1 pound, you would want to set it up as a fraction, 7.25 over 20. So that's going to break this down, price per pound, because right now we know how much it is for 20 pounds, but we want to know how much 1 pound is. So in your calculator, you're simply going to type in 7.25 and divide that by the pounds, 20 pounds. So for Annie's apple orchard, it cost about 36 cents per pound. So in order to write that, you'd write 0.36, 36 cents per LB, per pound. So you always want to have that explanation on there, per pound, whatever item it is. So let's look at Franklin's fruit orchard. On his, he has 12 pounds for $5. So like I said, anytime you're dealing with money, you always want to put your money in the numerator on top, and then whatever it is that you're talking about in the denominator on the bottom. So $5 on top divided by 12 pounds will tell you your unit rate, how much per pound. So let's go ahead and type that into our calculator. $5 divided by 12 pounds. So for Franklin's, it's 0.416. So we're going to average that to be about 42 cents per pound. So 42 cents per pound. So who has the better deal? Should you go pick apples at Annie's apple orchard, or should you go pick apples at Franklin's? If you're paying 36 cents per pound, then you could get them from Annie's. If you're paying 42 cents per pound, you can get them from Franklin's. So if you just want to go do a $5 bill and not worry about your price per pound, obviously you can go get 12 pounds for $5 if you're wanting the cheaper route. But if you're wanting the better deal would be Annie's. So let's go ahead and look at a few other examples in our lesson. So flip your page. Let's look at our first example. So in this example, we're going to compare two different planes. So this particular airliner, they give you a table. This particular airliner, they give you a graph. You're going to notice in this lesson that you're comparing two different speeds of these airplanes, but they don't present themselves in the same manner. You're going to compare a table versus a graph. Now, if you're unsure how to break this down, you need to go back and watch our growth day 1 and day 2 notes from the last 2 days on Wednesday and Thursday so that you can compare the two items. I teach you on Wednesday, I taught you how to do your little loop-de-loos and go and see what your growth would be, what's happening every single time, your plus and minuses. And then on graphs, we taught how to go from one point to another point and do a rise over run and see how the item is growing. So looking at this example, you'll notice it gives you the answers, but it also teaches you step by step. So it's going to tell you that finding the table, the cruising speed of this particular airplane, you're going to want to divide distance divided by time. So 40 divided by 5 gives you 8. 120 divided by 15 gives you 8. 240 divided by 30 gives you 8. Now, notice that your table did not have distance over time starting out. So you have to understand that something would be measured in a particular way, miles per hour. That's always going to be your distance per time. So looking at the table, you'll notice that they decided to do a triangle from point to point. So how much did they rise? It rose 30. How much did they run? 2. So 30 divided by 2 would give you this particular airplane's cruising speed. So this particular airplane, because they did distance divided by time, once they did their little loop-de-loos, they found out that this one has a speed of 8 kilometers per minute. Once this particular graph did a rise over run triangle, they found out that it has 15 kilometers per minute. So who has the greater cruising speed? Which airplane? It would be the Boeing, absolutely. Okay, so let's look at this try it problem on the bottom. The try it problem. The graph represents the rate at which Marlo makes origami birds for a craft fair. The equation y equals 2.5x represents the number of birds Josh makes in X amount of minutes. Who makes birds at a faster rate? So you're always going to want to read your problem, and your problem is going to tell you if you're talking about just an equation or if you're talking about a graph. So in this particular problem, it tells you the graph represents the rate. So the graph over here is Marlo's rate, and in the actual equation is Josh's rate. So go ahead and write Josh's rate out so that you can compare them easier. So Josh has a rate of 2.5 per minute. So he does that many birds, that many minutes. So 2.5 birds in 1 minute. The graph is going to tell you what Marlo does. So notice that this graph, the minutes are not by individual minutes. Your minutes are by 20 minutes. So you're going to want to solve this and break it down. So at 0, obviously there are 0 birds being made. But if we go over, we see that there is a dot at 4 birds in 20 minutes. Can you divide and find out your rise over run to break this down to 1 unit versus knowing how much in 20 minutes he does? Absolutely. What you would want to do is you would want to rise and then run. And you always want to rise and run to 2 different lattice points, not just any point on the graph. So how much did we rise? We rose 4 because it went from 0 to 4, so that's 4. How much did we run? We go from the y-axis, which is 0, over to 20, so we ran 20. And you always want to write your fraction as the change in y over the change in x. So for Marlo, his y went up 4, so 4 on top. He went over on his x-axis 20, so 4 divided by 20. And we can break that down to a unit rate to see how many origami birds Marlo makes per minute. So 4 divided by 20. So Marlo, he doesn't even make 1 entire bird in a minute. He only makes 2/10. So Marlo's rate is 0.2 per minute. You always want to make sure that you're breaking things down into the same increment. So who makes birds at a faster rate? Well, this particular problem gave us John's rate. It gave us his equation. So that was John's rate, 2.5 birds per minute. We had to figure out Marlo's by doing our rise over run. So Josh makes 2.5 birds per minute. Marlo makes 0.2 birds per minute. Who makes birds at a faster rate? Josh. Good. Convince me. If you were to graph the data for Josh and Marlo on the same coordinate plane, how would the two lines compare? Josh's line would be steeper because he has a faster rate. His growth rate is higher, so his line would be steeper. And if you're unsure of what I'm talking about, we did discuss that yesterday in the lesson, so make sure you go back and look at it. Okay, let's look at the next page. Let's go ahead and look at our example 3. You can go in and look at this example 2, and I encourage you to read through it and see what is happening on that particular video game with Brianna and Daniel. But I want to go ahead and jump down to this problem, number 3. Example 3. The graph represents the cost per ounce of a granola cereal. So this is the graph. You always want to read your problem, like I said earlier, to make sure you understand which item is being talked about and where. So the graph is the price of granola cereal. A 15-ounce box of raisin cereal costs $3.90. Which cereal costs more per ounce? So the problem tells you you're going to be comparing a graph to a 15-ounce box of raisin cereal for $3.90. So one piece of information that you are going to compare is in the word problem. One piece of information is on the graph. Now, we need to break this down. Notice that they already broke it down for you. Anytime you're talking about monetary items, anything dealing with money, you always want to put your money on top and divide by the item. So that's why in this problem they did 3.90 divided by 15. So this unit rate for the raisin cereal is going to be 26 cents per ounce. Looking over here at the granola cereal, the way that they got 25 is they went from a point to another point. So how much did it change? It rose 2.5, it ran 10. So 2.5 divided by 10, and this is how they came up with 25 cents per ounce. Let's look at the try it on the bottom. So looking at this, we are going to compare the distance covered by the fastest high-speed train in Japan, traveling at a maximum speed, is represented on the graph. So the first thing we're talking about is the graph. The fastest high-speed train in the United States traveling at a maximum speed covers 600 kilometers in 2.5 hours. Which train has a greater maximum speed? So you're going to be comparing the graph to the word problem. I'm going to let you work on this one on your own, and I want you to check your answers with mine. I will have that posted on Schoology for you. So make sure you look at page 119 to see if you have the correct answer here as you're working it. Okay, let's see if we understand what's going on. So do you understand and do you know how? Before we get there, these key concepts at the top, this is a great study tool. At the top of all of your do you understand, do you know how pages, this is like a little Cliff Notes. And if you're unsure what Cliff Notes are, it's basically like a little cheat sheet. These are the Cliff Notes for math. You want to always study these key concepts. It will help you so much. So let's look at the do you understand and do you know how. Let's go ahead and try number 4. Amanda babysits and does yard work on the weekends. The graph relating to Amanda's earnings to the number of hours she babysits passes through the points 0, 0, and 424. The table relates to Petra's earnings, the number of hours she does yard work. So we're talking about 2 points for Amanda and a table for Petra's. Now, you're going to have to actually look at those ordered pairs and figure out what their rate of change is compared to the table's rate of change. So don't forget to do your little loop-de-loos and compare them. And I want you to check this answer with mine after you have a few minutes to work on it. Let's look down here at Milo. Milo pays $3 per pound for dog food at Pat's Pete Palace. The graph below represents the cost per pound of food at Mark's Mutt Market. At which store will Milo pay a lower price per pound? So you're talking about two different things here. You're talking about Milo paying $3 per pound at Pat's Pete Palace. So that's already broken down for you, $3 per pound. It's already broken down and done. And then you're also comparing Mark's Mutt Market here on the graph. So you're comparing something in the word problem to an actual graph. So if Milo's paying $3 per pound at Pat's Pete Palace, let's go ahead and write that down. So we're going to say Pat's is $3 per pound. Let's go ahead and look here and see if we can figure out how much it is at Mark's Mutt Market. So you can do this one or two ways. You can find your points and do your rise over run, or you can notice that $3 per pound. Well, I'm going to go down here on my pounds on the graph, and I'm going to go to 1. Notice that this line passes through way up here. So that's going to be above my cost of $3. That's almost closer to $4. So who's going to be a lower price per pound? Pat's. All right, let's go ahead and move on. On your practice and problem solving, this page you will need to work through, so page 121, and you'll need to check your answers with mine. You're going to be comparing a table to a graph. Don't forget to do your loop-de-loos. You're going to be comparing an equation in the word problem to a graph. You're also, at the bottom, going to be comparing something that they tell you about in the equation to something on the graph. Let's look at the back. You're going to compare your work with mine, page 122. In this one, you need to read all of the information dealing with this walkathon and check your answers with mine. Here, you're going to be looking at different plants and their growth, and you're going to check your work with mine to see if you compared them correctly. And also at the bottom, I would like for you to do the assessment practice to see if you get the correct answer when you're comparing Ashton, Alexa, and Claire. One piece of information is told to you in the word problem. You have to find out Alexa's information on the table, and you also have to find out Claire's information from the graph. So here you're going to be comparing 3 different items. If you need help with this, you are more than welcome to go back and review the beginning of comparing items. Don't forget, if you're ever talking about monetary value, you want to always put your money on top, price per pound, price per ounce. If you're ever talking about traveling, most likely you would like to have the distance on top and then the time on the bottom. I really hope this helps y'all. I hope y'all have a great day. Bye.